Hello and welcome to the GM Next Door podcast presented by Dungeon Master Daily. I am your host, Maximilian Hart. The GM Next Door podcast is all about learning from each other and hearing from game and dungeon masters just like you and me, not necessarily professionals, but folks who have been in the trenches, who run games on a regular basis, and who have some insight and wisdom to share. This episode, we're going to be hearing from a DM and friend of mine, Nakiya Milam Roe. He's a player in our current campaign and likes to play outside-the-box characters and run adventures with interesting twists. He's got some good stuff to say about creating adventures, what RPGs mean to him, keeping a timetable, why he doesn't fudge dice, and a whole lot more. So, enjoy. How long have you been playing D&D? I think you've been playing probably one of the longest of the people in our group. Or at least GMing one of the longest.
Yeah, I mean, for a very long time. So I've probably been playing D&D, official D&D, since I was as young as like 10, I think. I was 10 or 11 when I played my first full D&D game.
Why the distinction? Full
because even before that, before I had an understanding of dice and stuff, I was already into the idea of role-playing. And I had heard enough about it, and I had understood just enough about it that I would make my own settings and my own rules and my own silly stuff. And like, when I went outside to play with my friends, what we did is we made up scenarios. And because my friends weren't as into it as I was, I had to come up with this thing that I called Legend Box. It was basically the idea was that this was a little universe of my own that anything from any universe could be in, because I couldn't convince all of my friends to want to be into it otherwise. So we had the guy that showed up and played Master Chief, and he was just Master Chief. It was not like a Master Chief look-alike. He's just Master Chief for this game. And then, we had the guy that wanted to be a dragon, and then, there was some other, mixtures in there.
So
and then,
it was Super Smash Bros.
Yeah, and it was pick your character at the beginning, and then we did a whole thing, and it was, usually at first, it was a lot of just fighting, and it wasn't really more than, super fight, like who would win scenarios and stuff.
And you just, would argue about who would win.
And we would argue kind of a little bit here and there, but my friends I had almost snafu'd them into this belief that because I had started it, I had the authority over it.
Nice.
So I became the judge over these fights. And that was really what GMing was for me at first. Was just, I think Master Chief's gun would penetrate your armor. I think
for the record, Super Fight is an amazing game.
Yeah, and I think that it was a lot of fun at first. But it was also a lot of stuff that even then we had trouble doing without giggling at ourselves or thinking we were being ridiculous. Cause,
right.
I mean, but I was doing this at 9 and 10, so a little bit before I'd started playing D&D, and it was I know these are sticks. Or we had just gotten back from Ren Fair, and I loved doing that because we would go every year, and we always came back with at first we were can we get this cool leather thing that's $50, and then can we get one of these mugs, and we would get a couple of really expensive things that we would end up losing or hurting, and our parents were cool about it. So eventually we got to the point after a couple of years where can you just buy us as many wooden swords and shields as you're okay with? They're $5 a pop, Dad. And I know they break 30 seconds into any good fight where we're beating the crap out of each other.
But that's why you want to build it.
But can you get as many as possible? And he did, and then we would just go home with 16, swords and 4 shields because those lasted longer, and we could also put the straps back on when they broke. We knew how to fix those easier. And so a lot of it was that became for those couple months after Renfest, it was now we're all knights. We're all going to have the sword and shield thing, or one of us would do something stupid with 2 swords and hurt himself.
So when did you? So you said you were oh, I know this is just a stick. When did it? At what point did imagining everything become more fun than actually acting it out?
At what point did it stop kind of being LARPing and just being RP kind of deal? Probably it was after D&D. Yeah, it was after D&D. I had played a game, and we can go into specifics on that in just a sec. But I played a game with my best friend's family. and I had gotten to play some more, and then I had talked to my parents, and they started a game because of how interested I was in it, and they remembered playing when they were younger.
Oh, that's cool.
So it was after that, and then having dice made it easier. Because I guess LARPing, like, it always let the big kid win.
Yeah, there's no real adjudication mechanics.
Right. But because there was no way to decide things, sometimes it just broke down to, like, no hitting each other because we're going to hurt each other, but the first one who has their sword break loses. And it's like, that's just what happens. You have to take swings to break theirs, but you can't break yours. So be careful. And so we had to have these silly ways to, like, beat things. And I remember we had tons of, like, silly rules, like who could climb the tree faster. And it was a lot of physical stuff because that's all we had at the time. But then
it's because you're like a 10-year-old boy with too much energy.
And then it broke down, and as it got, like, after D&D and stuff, it became, I don't have dice yet, so it's now rock, paper, scissors, because I like the idea that it's not based on physical stuff. Okay. And also, it worked for me because in elementary school, I was the biggest kid. I think in, like, first or second grade, I shot up to almost 5 foot. I was 4'11".
Holy crap.
And I stayed that way until 11th grade. So I was way taller than everybody, and then I just saw them climb way up over me. And in high school, I was the Hobbit because of that. But then I hit 11th grade, and now I'm like almost a foot taller than I was. So it's like, wow, okay, this is different, and I'm not the short person anymore. But anyway, because I was tall.
There was a transition to more intellectual ways of deciding things.
Yeah, and I remember when I was the biggest kid in the school, I was the guy that beat the crap out of anybody who, like, looked at me funny. I got into a lot of fights. It was my favorite thing to do because I didn't get emotional in fights. My dad, like, drilled that into me. Don't get emotional. Don't let it bother you. He was trying to get me to not fight, but what he'd made me into was more like a monk. I was like, I can just laugh and smile off this fight while you're freaking out, and that will make me win. And I was just better at it because of that.
Actually more scared of you now.
And it was a lot of fun. It was my favorite thing to do until
kind of interesting.
Police officers were at campus, and it was like, you now get put in a squad car and your parents get called, and now it's a huge problem, so no more fighting. And I was like, okay, no more fighting, I guess, on campus.
We're going to move on.
Yeah, D&D.
So, what is, like, it seems like what drew you to D&D in general was just, like, the imagination part of it.
Yeah.
Like, you could do something cool.
Really?
Now, from what I know of you, and from the games that you've run for us and things like that, there's a heavy story element. Like, now as part of being a DM, you want to tell a good story.
Yeah.
When did that start?
I think just like going from sticks to dice, it was an evolution over time because I'm not a contentable person. I don't know if that's a real word, but I'm not someone who can grow to just be happy with one thing for too long. Yeah. And I know that.
Like D&D itself.
And like D&D itself. So I guess when I had told enough crazy, zany stories with this idea that I could do anything with any character and had so much control, I wanted more control. So I started going to very vanilla D&D. And then I wasn't at the point where I wanted to tell my own stories yet. I just wanted to have the D&D-esque stuff. I wanted the rogue, and I wanted the fighter, and I wanted the ranger, and I wanted the cleric, and maybe a paladin for flavor. But after I had done a lot of simple, run the dungeon stuff, I started to realize, I guess, since I can do anything, why should I do anything? And it wasn't necessarily like a moment of defeat, but a moment of, this is not interesting unless I make it meaningful. So it stopped being who are the characters and more what are their motivations, what are their stories, what are they really telling. Because when I was reading all these different books and watching these movies and shows, I realized that no matter what it was, my favorite moments weren't just when the characters were cool. It didn't matter if it was giant robots fighting giant aliens or if it was one little alien fighting another kid in school or something like Invader Zim. Like, I loved the stories that were interesting because of what happened. So I wanted to tell an interesting story of what happened. And I guess I started looking into writing, and I was a very pretentious kid. And I'm very careful. Yeah, I try my best not to be pretentious now. But when I was more pretentious, I was like, in order to keep this bloated sense of self, I need to be that guy that's like, no, the story is important because it's emotional. And I wanted to have my players feel something. So I wanted to give them the pet or the friend that they really liked and then take it away. And like I wanted to have them feel it, not just my character lost this, but I'm going to go talk about this now because I really liked it and it was crazy, I guess.
Okay. So so it's almost like you're like peeling back layers as you grew up from kid to like running around with your friends playing make-believe essentially to make-believe with structure to having that structure be part of the attraction and going to a more purely imaginative thing to focusing more on stories.
Yeah.
Is there something after that? Like,
I don't know. I don't know what the next step is. I'm almost even worried that knowing who I am, I'm like becoming disillusioned with D&D and stuff. But that's also probably, it's like, admittedly, I've had a lot harder time having fun playing games or hosting them lately in the last year or two. And it's probably because in the last year or two, my life has just gotten a lot better. So the need for escapism has severely declined. I still love these things, but it's like there are games now where everyone else had a good time, and I'm just like walking home like, I know that was cool, but it was whatever, Like I did it because it was Wednesday, I did it because it was Thursday, I did it because it was Friday, and this is not on anyone else other than me. I know that it's like I'm not the same person I was.
Basically, you're in a position where you're starting to that taste is evolving again. You have to try to find.
I've got to find
what is the new thing that you're looking for.
I'm always chasing the dragon. I've got to find the next high for D&D.
Find an actual dragon. I would love to find a dragon, but I also hope I never found a dragon. Yeah, I think Tolkien has a quote on that. Like he wanted dragons with all of his heart, but he was very happy that there were none, so he could read stories about dragons.
Right.
Along those lines.
But yeah, I don't know what the next step is. I know that right now where I'm at, the most invigorating thing, I guess, is, like I said, it's emotion.
Yeah.
So the reason I tell a story isn't just so that it's a really cool story. I tell it because I want that to be a story that they want to tell later, I guess. Something that affected them on a player level, not a character level. Both, actually, really. Like, so that's the goal.
As you start planning, because you've had some interesting like not campaign ideas, but like adventure ideas.
Yeah.
So you start with the premise of like, I want to tell a cool story that will get my players interested and affect them somehow emotionally.
Right.
How do you get from that to something playable?
Well, usually I mix it. I blend. I've got like 2 lists in my phone and in my head and in everywhere. I write down all the time, but they're basically ideas for what would be a crazy cool emotional thing. Like I was talking to you before we started recording about the shadows.
Yeah.
I read about this a little while ago, and I don't know what got me so hooked on it, but I love this idea of seeing how players react when they lose something like a shadow. Like you don't have your shadow anymore, and now this echo of yourself is an enemy. And that maybe you don't beat it there, and it's going to come back to haunt you.
Right.
And now it's like this thing where when people notice it, they're like, why don't you have a shadow? Like, what's going on there? Yeah. And you either have to explain it or remember it for yourself. So for me, that's where I'm at. So I have this cool idea for an emotional part, maybe. And then the mechanics part, I come up with. And then when those two blend together, it creates what I do, I guess. So the mechanics part is, as you know, with some of the campaign ideas I've run for you guys, I want to do something new. Mm-hmm. I don't care if it's broken. I don't care if it's not perfect. The level 1 or the level 0 campaign, I should say. I want to do something that someone's never done before that I think captures an element, and it's not because they haven't done it. I'm not worried about I'm original, I'm first, but just the feeling of something new. I guess
break people out of
shake it up.
Same.
Yeah. Because as much as I love the same, and as much as I spend nights at home now where I'm like looking at it, I'm like, man, I want to, like next time I host, I just want a super generic D&D game because I'm missing it.
Yeah.
I'm starting to see more and more that I just want to have the like little fun quest adventure thing that becomes maybe more important later, but is just killing goblins and orcs because there's a dragon about, And it's like I'm falling in love with that idea again. So I might be coming full circle in some of my evolutionary path stuff. But, so I guess the new mechanics is how I make it into an adventure. So I had the idea of I love doing false faces and lies and social games and stuff. So the level 0 adventure, some of you guys were not who you thought you were and not who you said you were. and there were lies.
So to give some context,
Yeah.
is basically we ran a level 0 campaign. We were all given characters. Basically, you made up, I think
it was
table of
21
6
or 24.
Yeah, you made up a lot of characters. We all had at least 3 characters that were level 0.
Yeah, and for anybody who's listening thinking that that's a lot, it's not, because all I really did was what I do with a lot of my random characters. In Xanathar's, there's a great tool just to catch anybody up. I just basically rolled on random tables for all of them, and then found out the most interesting way that those things make sense together. Yeah. So there were a couple times where I
build your own characters to begin with anyways.
Yeah, that's really how I get the starting of a lot of my favorite characters, because I'm at a point now where I'm always conscious that I'm going to write the same thing, and I don't want to do that. I want to be something different, so I give myself the prompt, you know?
Right. Okay. So actually, out of curiosity, you've got your cool story concept, and you have an interesting mechanical idea that you want to kind of marry into the premise for a campaign. I think was it Friday? You were telling me that you spent like a long time making your own RPG and then just ditched it.
Yeah.
To tweak other people's ideas. But what is it about? Like, do you think what is it about hacking new rules and mechanics that you like? I've discovered that I'm starting to really enjoy finding ways to do that too. If there's something about D&D in particular, I've told you this, I feel like D&D needs crafting of some sort, or at least character customization. You're going to have every champion fighter is the exact same.
Yeah, and
maybe not in the roleplay side of things.
No, but you said
and things like that side of things. The more customization is good without bogging it down and without turning it into something completely unrecognizable and unwieldy. And
I think you said something that really struck me. That was an idea I guess I agreed with immediately, and that's when you hit level 2 or level 3, or if you're a warlock, level 1, and you pick your subclass. You know what your level 20 looks like. Even if there's a couple feats in there, the feat selection in 5th is not so broad that you're going to be 100% different. Usually just makes you better at a thing you like doing. Or gives you a somewhat unique ability or a twist on an already existing mechanic. But there's not a lot in there that you can't say, yeah, that's my level 20.
Or even, it also doesn't let you adapt to the world around you. Like if you were a person in this world and things are happening, you might choose to focus it on some other aspect that you're deficient in instead of like, well, I've decided, 8 months ago I'm going to do this, so I guess I'm going to keep doing that.
Yeah, and the fighter, who's building champion because they didn't know what they wanted to do at first, who's 6 levels into a campaign now that they realize is going to go epic levels and it's going to be another year of playing before they get anywhere. Where do they go if they're like, I suddenly realize I want some healing ability? Like, I might be a toughish tank, but
it would be multi-class.
But multi-class is your only choice. Yeah. But the issue with multi-class is there are some blends out there that people have done. Yeah. And it's usually involving things like Rogue's ability to sneak attack, or a fighter's action surge. Hexblade for summoning your weapons. There's a couple features early on into a class that are really, really juicy, and that when they blend together can be ridiculous. But other than that, my opinion on multiclassing is it's a waste of time. You are almost always going to be better in general if you don't. Because you're over here at level 7 gaining your level 1 abilities as a cleric, and it feels really good, kinda, because it's level 1 kits are the biggest kits. Yeah. It's because it's the thing that defines all your abilities. So for sure. Level 1 or level 2 is when you really feel like you've gotten a ton of stuff. But right after that, it's like, okay, in 4 more levels, I've got a thing. I've got a thing that'll be interesting. Or, oh God forbid, in 4 more levels, I have a thing I don't care about, because in 6 more levels, I've got a thing I care about. Yeah. And there's so much time there because of power creep. And as a GM, we are always thinking, how can we limit our characters in some way from reaching such a high level that they've got nowhere to go, and also that I have to plan way harder to make things happen.
I think part of that is comes with intentionally ending campaigns before epic level.
Yeah.
If you're not actually like ready to do that and want to do that.
Yeah.
I feel like putting an end on a campaign is important.
I agree. But that only emphasizes my issue again with things like multi-classing.
Yeah.
Because if your whole idea in your head when you're reading this book is this is my 16 fighter 4 warlock, when do you take those levels?
Yeah.
And when do you really feel like, oh, we ended at level 11. Here's my 8 fighter and 3 warlock. And it's like, I'm not really there yet, you know?
Yeah.
So when does that start to feel okay? Because you can't tell your players, all right, we're stopping at level 12. I think you can and you can't. You can because it's cool, but also at the same time, then you set this, I feel like for me anyway, you set this hard deadline that's too hard. And then some players might be turned off, some players might be turned on because then they can build for level 12. But I don't know. I guess
the campaign that I'm running now / starting to run, it's been sort of like messing around, but we're like actually getting serious now. That's the one that I was like going to be the actual real start of the focused campaign today. That didn't happen. But that one, I've said.
Yeah, I think
it's
you told
going
me.
from 3rd to 10th.
3rd to 10th.
And like if they skip some stuff, they won't get to 10th.
Yeah.
You know, but they can expect to be around 10th level.
Yeah.
You know, by the time they have to go fight the whatever.
I'm super interested to see how that all works out and stuff and the merits to that. But I'm also one of those GMs that's still very trapped in the mentality that I think too many GMs have, which is secrets are king.
Yeah.
And I don't think they really are. I think that when I look back in hindsight, most times secrets hurt things. You know, like for instance, you're doing the level 3 to 10 thing. You've said 3 to 10. And defining that is a very healthy thing for the way they want to build, how long they think the game's going to run. And we've talked about your reasons for that too. Yeah. But at the same time, I guess for me, I start to get worried. I have this building anxiety in the back of my head. Like, they know they're level 9 and I said level 10. So, like, they know they don't have a lot left, you know?
Yeah.
And it's like, I don't know why that feels bad, but it does.
Well, I feel like that's just a matter of planning, you know?
Yeah.
You can only plan so much, you know, because you can only plan away from the table, basically.
And the best made plans.
And then once you're at the table, you're planning and doing at the same time.
Yeah.
But at that point, it's like, well, if they're at 9th level and then we're getting to 10th level, the campaign darn well about, like, they better be on the way to the dragon pretty much, you know?
Yeah, and I guess looking at it that way, you can have this crescendo where you are at the point where they're not really thinking about level. They're thinking more about, okay, I just hit 9. I need to use this level to make sure I have the abilities ready to fight the dragon now. We're getting there because the dragon's right there and we know that. And I guess it becomes less of them thinking about the campaign's ending soon and more about how do we end the campaign? How do we beat this? The story's ending soon. How do we beat what's in front of us with what we're being given?
So this is the first time I've ever put a cap like that on it. I ran Princes of the Apocalypse, which is thematically really cool, but it's just a freaking nightmare of organization.
I've read bits and pieces of it because I've stolen from it.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a fantastic adventure to steal from.
Yeah.
It's a nightmare to run. Yeah. If you really let things go as sandboxy as advertised, you know, because it is very loosey-goosey with the levels and what things will end up. People have actually published stuff being like, okay, here, just turn it into this. This is how you turn it into quest XP. So when the players do this, they get this much XP. So you're now worrying about this random encounter and that encounter and these XP. Well, they went here and then they turned around and came back. Did they get the XP? Did they not? It's an adventure that needed a lot of scaffolding to make it work.
And just to say, that's probably one of my favorite parts about the D&D community in general, though, is the fact that that stuff exists and that
my goodness,
now we're so widespread as a community that you can find tools like that anywhere. So just that's awesome. But it is also to say about the actual campaign itself that it needs that. Yeah. Like, it's cool, but
so
it needs that.
As I'm planning this campaign, I'm like, okay, I want to tell the specific story, and we've talked about the bits and pieces, and I don't want to spoil too much because the campaign hasn't happened yet. I'll get back to you in like 7 months. But I'm planning it from a standpoint of I know kind of what things need to be happening when. When you have your ideas and stuff, do you plan out that much, or do you just have your ideas and kind of wing some stuff as you go?
It's both, to a degree. There's a little here, a little there, and that sounds like a cop-out answer, but to explain, I guess my best planning is if I know something important needs to happen.
Right.
The only rails in my game are time. And that's because, the classic time waits for no man. So the time does not wait for the party.
Right.
And while they're excited that I just dropped 20 days of downtime on them, and they're figuring out how to spend
those
that.
20 days.
Those 20 days were not downtime for me. That was all adventuring for me. My villain is moving. Yeah. He is doing things. Or my villains. I might have a couple of plots at the moment. Mm-hmm. Things are happening. That archbishop that they let walk away in the last campaign. He's not idle. He's not sitting in a hut somewhere, living out the rest of his days in peace. No, he's power hungry. He's going to go do something. He's going to be in the next scene. So, time. If I know, for instance, the players are in town and I need something to happen, but I don't want to railroad them, then it happens at noon. I don't know where they are. I don't care. And if they have to hear about it, that's a shame. I would have loved to have shown them that. But I put the path there, and if they walk down it far enough, they find what I was going to show them. So they see people. But it still happens whether they see it or not. Yeah, they see people gathering. They see, a town crier, and he announces that this is going on over here, and they don't know what this is, so they want to find out, and they go check it out. But time, really. So if I know, and that's why I've kept a calendar, and that's why I showed you guys that ridiculous...
Do you keep a calendar in track days for every campaign?
Yes. All of the campaigns I've run to this point, especially Cygnus, I had a timetable where if enemy A is not stopped by party, they arrive at location B and do thing C. And it's like, you guys... And I do that, I guess, also to give the opportunity for you guys to get a one-up on me. Or a leg up on me, I should say. Because if you guys act fast enough, or if you see something that I've hinted at quickly enough, you might beat my timetable.
Okay.
I guess in Critical Role, something like this kind of felt like it happened in Season 1, where I've been listening to that a lot lately, where they went to a place and did a thing and stopped an enemy from finishing a ritual, and they found out that it was going to be like a week later or so when that ritual would have happened. But I don't know if it felt like that way for everyone. It felt for me that Mercer had that date set in his head, and that if that date had happened, the bad guys would have won at their thing. They would have succeeded.
Do you think it's actually a matter of keeping a count? Let me rephrase. Let me back up. Do you think it's more important to keep that calendar in your head, or to have okay, if the players don't do this, they will arrive here, and then just have it kind of sort of assuming that everything goes to plan, they're going to arrive 3 days late, whatever that ends up being, and then you bump it forward or back? Do you think it's actually really, because you've done it so far for every campaign? Is that a central part of your planning and stuff like this?
I think it is
calendaring it out.
I mean, you can definitely have, and it's much easier as a GM to control the knob on time for your game if you just go, the bad guys are going to arrive 2 days after the players, or if the players spend too much time doing this, then the bad guys will arrive a day before the players, and this will happen. And it's more loosey-goosey in a way, where it's not concrete, but I guess I like concrete because part of me feels like this is curating an experience for players, but in order for me to enjoy the game, I guess I don't want to know what comes next. There are times when I roll on a random table because I don't want to know what's about to happen. I want to see it happen. And part of my enjoyment as a DM is being able to put on my little calendar, big bad guy attacks town on the 22nd. Players get there whenever they get there. I don't know when you guys are going to get there. I've put it in front of you that you guys could arrive on the 12th, and I don't know what you'll be doing exactly, but I know that unless something changes for this character, this bad guy, or this town, that this is going to happen. And then I just pay attention to the cues. Do the players get there on the 12th, and then for some reason that I don't understand, spend the next 10 days setting up the town for a perfect defense? And it's like, well, you guys got me. I don't know how you knew it. Maybe I dropped a hint that was a little too strong. Or do they get there and they diddle around and they don't do anything for, 15 days, and then the attack happens while they're there or while they're not there? And I guess for me that brings back verisimilitude. The idea, and then also once my players start to smell that, they realize how important time is. And they realize that, I guess, one important thing is Oblivion and Morrowind had this outside of the game element where certain characters would be in certain places at certain times,
Right.
but they also would move between towns sometimes and had certain weird elements. And they ended up taking that out, I think, by the time you get to Skyrim, because what happened sometimes is that the computer would go, character was moving from town to town and died because there was monsters here.
Right.
And now this character was non-essential. You're never going to finish their quest because you're never going to beat them. And it's like that became a problem for the engine from what I've read about. But that idea, whether it's true or not, or fully functional in the game, the idea that stuff is happening away from me feels like it adds such a real element to the world.
Oh, and we talked about that. That's going to be... My players are going to run into something like that very soon.
Yeah.
There was an escort quest, and they took the little poster for the quest and
Yep.
never talked to the guy.
And so...
And that's going to have some consequences.
Yeah, consequence. Cause effect. That
yeah.
stuff is so important to me because... And for instance, like I said, and that when I referenced that Archbishop, that was from an old campaign of mine. He begged and borrowed, and they finally let him go. And he was like, please, I'll do anything. And they let him go because they felt like he was just, a victim of circumstance.
Right.
But no, that was a bad guy. That was a bad guy on his last, steps, doing anything he could to live. And now I've got a timetable in my head of where he goes, what his next move is.
So you have... I know from playing with you that your combats, you always have like multiple outs.
Yeah.
Especially with you as a player. For the record, the very first time I ever met Nakiya was pretty much, I think it was the first time. It might have been the second
That
session
was like
ever.
the second or third time we'd ever played together, but you were
We never
jamming.
really talked to each other or done much.
No.
But my first session, I was the DM and he was a player. And he was playing a Kenku that got swallowed by an undead T-Rex, I think.
Well, you pulled a, I guess for most people, Star Wars would be the easiest way to remember this, where we walked into the mouth of this beast.
It's
because
actually,
it was
that's how the adventure's written.
Yeah.
It was like it was an Adventurers League one shot from the Chult series. And they walked in long story short, Tapper, the infamous Kenku, whatever the heck you were, ended up cutting his way out the rear end of the T-Rex.
Yeah, everyone else said we need to run away, and they ran out the mouth, and I said, I'm going to keep going the direction I came from, or headed towards anyway.
Definitely a challenge as a DM, but knowing... I forget where I was going with the question. Multiple outs for combat, like knowing that from you as a player, you definitely have that, like you want your character to do like the cool thing, not necessarily the most obvious thing.
Yes.
So I know you have that in place for monsters as well. Like surrendering is always a thing because then it's a like a moral question too.
Do we kill the unarmed, not fighting back enemy?
So on a like we've talked like for full adventure and ideas and stuff like that on a session to session basis, encounter to encounter. How do you plan that? Like, what goes behind your head when you're like, oh, crap, I got a game in 4 hours?
Yeah, I'll be honest. And spoiler warning, it's a lot of seat in my pants. Yeah. I have overarching ideas. I have a calendar. I keep that because then I make a spattering of notes all over it. And there's like X's where, in my phone, for a while there was a campaign where I was just using my phone calendar and I was getting weird alerts because I was like, bad guy arrives here. This is where the party is. I was like, oh, what's going on? And I looked back and I remembered, oh, that's right, you didn't have your notes handy. Yeah. So for this game, you were just like, you know what, calendar's close enough to ours. It's like, this is when that day, this is when they are, this is how long it'll take them. Because I needed to do math on the fly and I didn't have any paper in front of me even. Right. But so I have a couple of things like my calendar, my notes, and in my notes I have bigger, wider ideas. Like, bad guy is freeing other bad guys over the course of this prison. Okay. And, that's his thing. So I don't know exactly where you guys are going to go. Do
you plan out, sit down with, Kobold Fight Club and plan out combats and that kind of thing for your encounters? Or do you just 4 orcs feels about right?
No. The only things I actually write are bosses. Or characters I think are highly important. Okay. And most of the time when I do that, I work off of a foundation. For instance, I just built a Minotaur-like player character and gave them extra abilities based on how I thought that should work.
Right.
Because I agree with some other GMs, Matt Colville especially. Players can do certain things, and enemies can do a lot of things the players can't understand or do.
Right.
And that's just going to happen.
Right.
So I'm totally okay with building a custom feature for a monster. And that's what I do. I build that monster, but the other ones I don't worry about. I mean, I either reskin something, I take that basic orc and I just say, well, that's his human minion or whatever, but he's still going to be as ferocious as that kind of combatant. I need about that much health, etc. And the monster manual is so chock full of things that I've gotten so familiar with over the years that if I look at
you don't
something,
really need to do the hard math.
no, I don't really do it, and also because that stuff doesn't matter as much to me, I guess.
Right.
Because most of the time when my players do something awesome, they also break, and like I'm a narrative GM.
Right.
So
what does that exactly mean?
For example, I knew that you guys had a rogue in the Cygnus campaign. I didn't realize she could do so much damage with her assassin.
Yeah.
But I did also know that one of the major plights of all GMs is my boss does the cool walkout and then gets focus fired.
Yeah.
Because I wanted to do a cool narrative scene, but realistically, like, what we don't see happen in the movies is all of the good guys go, that one's gotta die first, and they go for him, and suddenly it's a 1v7, and you're like, I don't know what to do anymore, there's no way, no amount of hit points is gonna survive this, and also still be fun.
Yeah.
So for that, that juicy hit point pool that she ripped right through was actually seconded by the ability to come back to life. It was an idea I cooked up based on kind of like Undead Fortitude that I blended with a Barbarian's Rage because some of the influences I was building this boss behind. So these items that he had, these bracers, would allow him to reaction rage, and that would make it so he couldn't go down unless he failed a con save against a DC set by the damage done. But so when she had done that, she had actually crested his hit points by only like 10 points. So the DC wasn't very high, and I made it.
Obscene amount.
Which was an obscene amount. Because she cleared his whole health bar and then went 10 under. But because it was only 10 under, he was able to get back up. And when I had him get back up, I made him use one of his legendary actions because he had a thing where I was thinking, criticals suck for me. So I need a way to like get something back right away, just in case this is my boss's last move. So when she criticaled him, his ability to reach out and he would immediately inflict an injury on a player if they didn't pass a high save. Okay. So he reached out and he broke her arm.
So how much of that did you actually plan out ahead of time, and how much of that was you're in the moment? This is not going the way this is not going not the way you thought it would, but this is not narratively satisfying.
Yeah. That boss monster was fully planned out before we sat down. Okay. The way that he would have a critical, like a legendary reaction where a couple times during the fight, if he gets criticaled, which I thought was enough because he's not going to get crit that much. And if he does, damn it, the dice have decided he's not important. But anyway, so he had the ability to reach out and basically do a critical back. So I'd had those ideas in my head and his ability to come back from zero already because I wanted it to be you're not going to win this by focus firing.
Right.
And if you do, it's going to cost you. There are going to be times where, like, I hit him, I did a lot of damage, but he rolled high enough, so basically my turn didn't function very well, and we've still ignored his 7 minions, and they're still beating on us. So, the fight turned out fine. Just like all the other fights in that campaign, I had made you guys powerful enough that the stakes felt high, but you guys won. So it didn't feel bad on my end, and I wasn't upset that he died. But yeah, him I had planned from like the beginning.
Okay, cool.
Because in the same way with the Minotaur, like those are the ones because those are fun for me to build.
Right.
So I like doing that, so I do that.
So for the other custom stuff that you mentioned reskinning, is that like a go-to?
Yeah, typically. I mean, there's so much in the monster manual that fits so many different categories with so many unique abilities that most of the time, if I'm like thinking to myself, okay, I need this enemy who's going to be able to do this thing. Yeah. For instance, I have a high-level caster, but I also know that they've got some cool psionic stuff. I don't need to be able to build a caster on the spot. I need to be able to go to Mind Flayers and grab the like high-level Arcanist Mind Flayer dude, and he's the boss now. He's the guy that's going to fight because I didn't have an idea for where you guys would go until now.
Okay. So that's kind of what I did with the campaign that you guys are in, like our Wednesday backup.
Mm-hmm.
The party goes under decks and it's the sea spiders.
Yeah.
It was phase spiders. Just like a reskin phase spider in a kind of a way that's not... I mean, it was for people that, like, for those of you at the table who are like, oh, that's a phase spider. Like, it's pretty obviously a phase... But at the same time, it's not, because it's slightly different and it still makes it kind of cool.
And there was a part in my head that said phase spiders. But then you went on and on about this water and the sea level with webs and stuff. And it was so unique that as a player at the moment... I was like, this is something he's entirely come up with on his own.
Yep. No.
And I know, like...
Ain't nobody got time for that.
Like I said, the jam in the back of my head is like, this is a flavoring.
Yeah.
But as a player, I'm sitting there looking like, this is why I don't... Like, it's different enough. I do not know what can happen.
Exactly.
Which means as a GM, you've succeeded.
Yeah. I feel like that's a large part of the reason for flavoring. Mm-hmm. For reskinning.
Yeah.
And I don't want to say like reskinning everything in custom monsters all the time. There's a lot of people I know, like not a lot of people I know, but a lot of people I've read and heard about that do all custom monsters.
Yeah.
Just so that the player has the same experience as the character.
I would love to, but I would also love to be a full-time writer. I would also love to not have to work.
Yeah.
I would also love to not be interested in school right now because that means it's more time I'm going to lose. And there are times when, as much as I love having that awesome relationship, I'd love to not have to feel like I've put so much time into it because it's great every second. But then when I'm at the table as a GM, I'm like, man, if I'd only spent the last few days writing instead of just cuddling, I could have gotten somewhere. But the cuddling was great.
Yeah. So of all the things that you've reskinned, homebrewed, rules, subclasses, items, custom boss monsters, what are some of your favorite things that you've homebrewed? From mechanics, from tweaking things to like when you're writing your own system, things that you pulled in from that to, a simple reskin.
I guess as a GM, at the risk of again sounding pretentious, I think some of my favorite things are going to be like when you ask me questions like this as we go through, it's going to be very recent stuff because I'm always trying to do my favorite. You're always
thing. Improving too.
So for me, Army of One, the feat that I brewed for the main boss of Cygnus, where he got a turn for every 2 characters he was fighting, so long as he was fighting alone. And I had to rule in alone because I realized that there's going to be times he's got allies, and it should not, like, that should reduce the amount of turns he gets, because otherwise this is a feature that's just blown out of the water, broken, and it's not really Army of One anymore because that's the theme. But yeah, that feature where he had multiple initiative orders. Instead of just legendary action, reaction, because that's too free. And as a player, that amount of freedom for the GM does not feel good. It does not feel good when you were like, I'm fighting the dragon. Oh, okay, he resisted my thing. Because even though you said he rolled too low, he said he burns a resistance. He resisted my thing. So as a spellcaster, I guess it just doesn't do anything.
I don't tell my players when I'm using legendary resistances.
That's another good idea. But also it comes to how much information do you want to give? Yeah. You know what I mean? 3 to 10. That is a lot of information as far as I'm concerned. But at the same time, you have the belief that, maybe don't share when I'm using legendary. But then again, it's about tonal setting. So for me, if I use a legendary and I have a limited number, because if it's just a super powerful ability that's just going to keep happening, calling it a legendary reaction or whatever or action,
but like when it's like a 2-a-day legendary resistance,
but if it's a 2-a-day,
nope.
I want to tell my
players.
Like
that's something. See, this is an interesting point where I disagree. Like I don't because the characters wouldn't know that the fireball doesn't seem to be having much of an effect.
This is true.
Do I keep casting the fireball and just wear through? Like eventually he's going to crack, or do I have to find something different? And the character might not necessarily know that.
And
in my brain,
totally
I don't tell them for that reason.
But for me, the reasoning is it's character and player knowledge.
Yeah.
And you have to acknowledge both to move forward. Mm-hmm. So for a player, especially if sometimes I know something's going to be awesome, I roll in front of them. Because I don't want to give my
dramatic
ability...
moments and stuff.
I don't want to have the ability to fudge in my hands because I don't want them to think I did.
Yeah.
And I want it to be raw. We're sitting here all playing a game. I don't want to know what's about to happen. So here it is. So especially in moments like that, I want them to know that they achieved something. Because when the fighter runs up and swings, by the time you're dealing with big bosses, they've got at least 2 attacks.
Yeah.
Which means most of the time, unless the AC is ridiculous and you're basically telling your players stop swinging, they're going to hit once. The wizard does not have that. The wizard is going to go, that's my ability. And this is one of the abilities I only get once or twice per day because I wanted a big one. And then I'm going to roll, and it was low, and I need them to know that you succeeded, but this guy's not going to go down that easy. So if I am using something like Legendary Resistance, and it is limited by 2 or 3, I want them to know you got one.
Right.
And if you keep working, you'll get another. Because what I don't want a wizard to do is go, well, that was Bumpkus. My fireball did nothing. They resisted it, and then they evaded the other half damage, so I am now useless. And a lot of players are not like myself.
Do you think there's a way to do that narratively? Just like actually straight brainstorming here? Is it like maybe be like, yeah, the dragon like, you know, shielded up a wing and only took out damage, but you see that his wing is like a little scarred now
exactly.
or something. Like,
exactly that. That's one of the things that I'll do is I'll show like you've had effect, but not what you wanted.
Right.
But it's effect. It's something. It feels like maybe they lost a couple scales if it's this big dragon,
right.
Or like you hit them and it stuns them for a second. Like they're engulfed in this fireball, and you notice that they're like resisting it.
It's not just they went like, oh, was there a stiff breeze?
No,
you know?
Because as much as that might be kind of fun to go, this is the big evil guy, it's a real kick in the nads for a player, especially if that was one of their big ones. Yeah. I mean, if you're on a 12th level campaign and they're like, I throw out my 3rd level fireball, and it's like, it has no effect, then they're like, damn it, I gotta go bigger. But, you know, if you're in a 5th level campaign and they throw up their 1 3rd level fireball and they're like, this is the big one, I've been saving this, this is my, gun, then it has no effect and it doesn't feel like they did anything. Yeah, they accomplished really nothing. Ouch. Yeah. You know? So, and as a wizard, I don't ever want that to happen to me, so I try not to let it happen to my players.
So I never take fireball.
Yeah, I really don't. I had this issue, actually, the other night, really quick sidebar. I play in a Thursday game, and we got into a big fight, and my wizard has no abilities.
How many games a week of RPGs are you in right now?
Right now, 3. And that is my hard cap. Yeah. And I'll be honest, there are weeks when I lay them out mentally in front of me, and I'm like, which one's got to go? Which one is it? Is it Wednesday, Thursday, or Friday? And you being part of the Wednesday game, I don't want you to feel like you guys are on the chopping block.
Well, that's life.
But everyone is on the chopping block when I'm looking at time. When I'm looking at, okay, this week I'm going to be working 40. So, I'm not going to have any time. And it's hard for me to look at a person like Gabby, who I care so much about, and go, sorry, sweetheart, I work till 6 on Wednesday. I'm going straight to the game. You're not going to see me after 8 a.m. and you're not going to see me before 11:30 p.m.
Yeah, that's right.
And it's like, so I'm going to be gone all day, and just be here when I'm back so that it's convenient for me.
Yeah,
and it gets hard to go, hey, I'm working all day on the one day of the week that we usually hang out, but I'm still going to go to all 3 of these games and not give you any extra time. I'm not going to make time for you.
Yeah, I mean the old gaming phrase, real life always comes first. Mm-hmm. The Kind of a follow-up question. So you've got your homebrew stuff. As far as homebrew stuff for your players, what are the kinds of things that you like to do for your players? Like I know you kind of like plan some stuff based around the player backstory.
Yeah.
And, a little bit of that. But do you do, like right now? We've been working on a Chronomancer. Yeah. For your character.
Which I honestly think we might want to re-flavor even the name, because Mancer is so associated with wizardry. Not, like, you know what I mean? It's not a stoneomancer. It's a stone sorcerer.
Yeah.
So we might just need to do time sorcerer or something. But anyway, yeah.
Anyways, yeah. So, so like, what kind of things do you do for your players as they advance? So, like, for, like, milestone or XP type, like, that type of question for sure. But then... do you like to do like customized magic items, or right? I think the feat. Yeah, you wrote a feat for one of my characters, like, or subclass. Like, what are the kinds of things that you do for like outside of the box player advancement?
I guess it has to be, first rule is it has to be somewhat thematic.
Yeah.
So it has to, like, for instance, if I have a player walk up to me and they're just like, I just want to be better at a thing for no real reason, or like, I usually say no. I'm usually not interested. I'm like, all right, you've got to figure out a way that this makes sense. So, for example, the feat that we wrote for you was kind of less thematic-ish and more just you want to be better at a thing. And then I went above and beyond to try to give you that more than you were asking
ridiculous.
for. But that's because, and again, we talked about this the other night, you didn't use it every 10 seconds.
Yeah.
It was really, really good, but also pretty close to, like, has to be used in certain circumstance. And I knew going in, I knew going in, I'm not going to be mad if he throws disadvantage on my attack as a boss. Because if I miss, it's going to make me want to hit him again, one. And two, he's burned his reaction. Yeah. There are a lot of things a reaction can do.
Even
and I don't know,
wizard.
and I don't know for sure, but I know you being a wizard, counterspell is one of them.
Oh, yeah.
And I don't want to be counterspelled, so let me give you an option. Let me make this reaction thing a gamble for you. Are you going to spend it on this or that?
I was always constantly weighing whether to use my reaction to like to do the thing.
Yeah, and I feel like anytime there's a choice like that, it's not broken. If it's broken, it's not a choice. It's I take it, I do it. It doesn't matter.
Sense, yeah.
So, but yeah, with that feat, letting you, I think it was as simple as all the feat does is lets you spend a reaction to roll 5 feet. But if you do this to a melee attack, it gives disadvantage.
And roll 5 feet.
Yeah, I think the idea was if you are moving from one space to another and the attack is no longer valid, they gain disadvantage.
Yeah.
So if the ranged attack is being made, but now you're in full cover, they get disadvantage to shoot you because you're moving, or the melee attack you're moving away from them.
It was only melee.
Was it maybe only melee?
I think it was only melee. Yeah.
I think I might have not expressed, but I might have been in my head giving you the possibility of going, I'm here, I'm now in full cover, you can't hit me.
Oh well.
And it was just a thing that I didn't necessarily present to you right off the bat. But that's the other thing. Anytime I give a
super
feat,
strong, but
yeah. But I also want it to have
with a wizard with shield and counterspell both around.
Yeah,
your reaction's a valuable thing.
Yeah, and I mean that'd be like handing that reaction to a rogue. Like it sounds good, but at the same time, you're not going to get your attack if someone moves away from you. You're not going to get evasion.
Or like a monk with catching projectiles
or a monk.
Or something.
Yeah, you're like you. Yeah. The action economy is there, so I'm not worried about giving extra things to do with your actions. Because the worst thing that's going to do, in my opinion, is make it so your turn is longer, or you're asking for more timeouts because you don't know and you need to think. And I get that, but I'm not worried about it. So yeah, thematic. It's got to have some reason that your character would have it, and some way that it fits in with your sense of character. Right. You know, I don't want a wizard that just goes, so can I have a thing where like I take a feat and now my mage armor is plate armor, and I'm like that. Seems entirely unfair to everyone else who wants to earn plate armor.
Maybe better not.
Also, there are ways to take 3 feats, which is what you'd have to do to get plate armor in the book. So I think circumventing that for you, and then also not charging you for the plate armor, and it starts to get into this thing where it's like, I can't make you that strong.
You have to. I mean, you can make a character if it was a 1-player campaign. It was like the DM and 1 player.
Yeah.
Freaking go nuts.
Oh, I go hog wild. To at the risk of sounding. Less than I am now. Me and Gabby's one-on-one campaigns that we have done in the past. I have silly rules for how she can get advantage, and I just give her whatever she wants, and it's like, yeah, by the way, you're married to a god, and you get to do or you got this cool companion now, or whatever it is, because with a one-on-one campaign, you stop worrying about balancing because it is literally just I have to now just come up with something strong enough to beat you, but I'm not considering you making another player feel bad. You're not so strong that another player's like, well, I don't have something that cool, or my thing doesn't work that well. And that is something you have to consider at a table, for sure. So that is the only balancing in my head is if I'm giving a player an option or a thing that is really cool and really good, how do I look at the cleric and go, you have not changed, but now you are still as good, and I need to look at them and be able to go, so you have this choice too, and I try to have the creative end of that on my side because you had an idea for something, I juiced it up more and we gave it to you. But there might be players at the table that don't have an idea, but still want to be as strong.
Yeah.
And it's like, that's, so I like to give those ideas. And I did that for a couple players at that same table, and they were like, nah, I just kind of want to do the regular feet thing, or do this or that. And I was like, yeah, all right, dude, whatever, you're missing out. Like, I'm over here for a superhero game. I'm ready to juice everybody up. Take your serum.
Out of curiosity, to get, like, just out of the way, you mentioned a little while back that you roll in front of the players to not, like, at really important moments so they don't think you're fudging dice.
Yeah.
Do you fudge dice?
No.
How come?
Because if in this moment I had to say yes, it would ruin certain parts of what I want my game to be. I kid you not, I have never been in an interview and never planned to be in an interview like this. But even in side conversations with GMs or co-GMs or anything like that, I'm not a liar. I have a hard time doing that.
Right.
So knowing that I have to tell the truth and knowing that I never want the truth of fudging a die roll to exist, I have to just not do it. There are times when I wish I could.
So so if I'm getting straight, you don't want somebody to know, oh, he does fudge dice rolls. What did we really kill that one thing?
Yeah, I never want to water down or take away from the experiences I've given to my players, and not any slighting or rude attitude towards anyone who does fudge a die roll. Right. We all have our own ways to play and our own reasons for doing things, and I don't fudge die rolls because I have other ways of beating that.
Right. What are those other ways for you?
First off, time is mine and the game is mine. Mm-hmm. So I won't fudge a die roll because, in my opinion, for me, that is flat lying. That is like saying, no, this happened, but this happened because I want this to happen. Mm-hmm. But if I want this to happen, I can just make it happen. So if I fail the save, and you guys defeat the boss, and it's like, he's got no way to come back from this. It was way more damage than I was expecting. He planned on surrendering. Then I just have him play by player rules, and he survives it at first. Like, he's on death's door, but now I'm going to make you make the choice to finish him. So you've still won. You've still gotten the last hit. But combat stops. He falls over, and he begs for his life. And then maybe I even behind the scenes am thinking to myself, narratively, 6 seconds is garbage for a turn. That's not how turns work. We all want to play Avengers Endgame. We want to play everybody's here. They're all attacking at once.
Right.
But realistically, one turn in a cool setting like Avengers is 30 seconds. Because we want to watch this guy do his thing. We want to watch this guy do his thing. But also, no cinematic viewer or person attending a movie theater would be like, oh, okay, so while he was doing that, and they're trying to mental math it. So they just happen one at a time each.
Right.
And that's how it happens in D&D. It's one at a time each.
Right.
We say simultaneous for the sake of certain things. Right. And to help try to keep a boundary on it. But time is mine. I can control it. I can say this happened now, this happened then. I can have a character react to something that, even though it's all simultaneous, you guys didn't all hit the boss at the same time. Like, he got hit, he backed up, or he got into cover, he healed, he did his own thing. Then you do your next thing. It's not like when he was taking his potion on his turn, the rogue was also stabbing him in the stomach, and the ranger was shooting him in the face.
The way I picture D&D combat sometimes is there's a scene in whatever the heck Captain America movie it was. Mm-hmm. We've got Captain America and I think Iron Man both beating the heck out of Bucky. Mm-hmm. In that moment, they never hit him at the same time.
Yeah.
And he's hitting, they're trading blows back and forth.
Yeah.
That's how I picture D&D combat.
Honestly. Yeah, and I agree. And there are moments that you might be able to reference in a book or a movie where it's and then they did this simultaneous blow, and that was the thing that defeated him. But in my head, that's when the players said, I hold my action to swing as soon as he swings.
Yeah.
There's ways to do that, but that should not be the every.
So you said you kind of mess a little bit with time. And the way I'm picturing this working is in Star Wars Republic. Some fights, you kill the thing, go kill the whatever. You kill the person and they die. And sometimes you get them all the way down and the little quest thing pops up and then you have to talk to them and I'm going to kill you or, walk away with your life.
Yeah.
Is that kind of thing the kind of thing that you're kind of talking about?
The only weight I need to throw behind it would be, it has to still feel like you guys won.
Oh, for sure.
I will never have you zero a boss, and unless, if I planned a thing where, he zeros and then something happens and now he's back. Half-orcs have that ability. Those things exist. And like I explained with that raider boss, he had a thing, he goes zero, he rages.
Yeah.
But unless I have something like that pre-planned, you guys have won. I am not going to pull a fast one. I am not going to say, you beat him, he's zeroed, but he runs away, he gets away. I'm never going to do that because I can't take your victory, but I do need it to be more narratively important. So I'm not just going to say, you've zeroed him, he's dead. I think at one point we were playing Waterdeep, and you had given us some NPCs, and I had made the argument to you, and you had gone with it, that the NPC had death saves. And I think it was because they zeroed him in the street, and it was not even 100 feet from guards, and I wanted him to have a fighting chance so that the guards could get over, and I made that argument to you, and you went with it, and what that made the rest of the players do to my NPC was decide, are we going to stay here to make sure he fails all his death saves, or are we going to leave? And when they left, the guy lived. Right. That, I think, is important to me. Because it doesn't feel good. It feels good to beat the boss. But it has way less importance and it matters way less if they just kill him. He's just gone. Right. So if I need it to be narratively important...
Do you at all play with, hit points?
Not really. There have been times where if I'm sitting down, especially for the first time with a new party, or if I'm sitting down with a group of adventurers and someone else joins, or if there's an ability that completely sidewinds me, then I might need to make an adjustment on the go. But I don't want that adjustment to be too big, I guess.
Right. You're not going to keep somebody alive for 2 whole more rounds.
No.
You might keep them alive till maybe their next turn.
I will say, an idea that I have played with but I have not done yet, I've mentally played with this idea, is I think it would be important as a GM to allow the killing blow to go to who it needs to go to.
Right.
So I've thought about it.
Keep things alive for the best person.
Yeah, and I've thought about it, and I want to look at my my turn order there, and I go, okay, so if the cleric does their cantrip on the boss,
right,
and that's the first time they've swung at the boss, and there's been a barbarian up at the front wailing on him for big dice. He's been taking hits. He's been putting himself at risk. Maybe the cleric's healed him too. The cleric's not doing nothing.
Oh, it's a team group,
but
whatever.
That barbarian, and if I'm looking at the health thing, I even actually, when I'm writing down, I write down who did the damage.
Oh, really?
I usually just do an initial, or a symbol. I've had it this guy, he's the axe, and I just do a quick doodle of an axe. It's just a very simple line in this circle.
Right.
But the idea is that so I can look at that and go, who's doing the most damage, who's doing what, because the boss also needs to react appropriately.
Right.
The boss needs to go, I'm not just going to hit the last person who hit me, because that's not fair to initiative. I need to hit the guy who might have hit me first 4 turns ago in a round, because this guy hit me a lot. It was hurt. It was bad. I need him to go away now.
It's actually not a bad idea to start tracking who does damage.
And so I write down, because what I do is I write down big damage numbers. I have a hit points, and I don't cross it and do less most of the time. I usually write how much damage they've taken from each hit. And then I just mentally kind of look at that. So I guess if you're talking about fudging health, I do quick math. If I'm looking there, I go 25 damage here, say 17 damage here, 8 damage here,
so
25.
So you don't keep a running total, you just keep the running?
I keep a running. Yeah, I don't usually total it unless I notice it's close to the finish. And notice it's close to the finish, I might take a second while someone's thinking about their turn and go, do. All right, go.
Interesting.
So that might be as close as I get to fudging. It's usually within 10 hit points because I might just drop a remainder on my math because I'm wait a minute, I didn't
Interesting.
Figure it out.
I've never heard of somebody doing that.
But I do that because I need to write down who's doing what damage.
Right.
But I don't have all day to write down the damage and then write down the total and do all this over and over.
Right.
Because I thought about it, and I haven't done it yet, like I said, but I would like to give the barbarian the kill.
Right.
You know what I mean?
I have kept... I'm really reluctant to fudge dice rolls.
Yeah.
I've done it a couple times.
Yeah.
Because of something that was my fault.
Yeah.
I fudged the numbers, really didn't let people know this is coming. I haven't done it in a long time. But I have kind of played a little bit with hit points, because hit points are always a given range anyways.
Yeah.
The number in the book is the average of the roll.
Yeah.
So technically...
That's kind of why I guess I'm uncomfortable with it.
I feel a lot more comfortable with playing with hit points, if for no other reason than sometimes for exactly that. You know, the bar, like, I've kept people alive, like, I've kept a monster alive for, like, one more person's turn.
That's what I mean. And I think, I've thought about it, and I think I would like to go, okay, if the barbarian is 2 turns from now, what's the rogue going to do? And are there other elements at play?
Yeah.
Do I need to emphasize, how much can I run this for? Because if I'm looking at it and the barbarian goes last, there's 6 people before him, and the boss is one of them. I'm so sorry, barbarian, but I might need to have him die sooner because I can't look the rogue in the face and go, he's close to dead. Okay, you do a sneak attack for 50 damage. He's close to dead. Because it doesn't feel fair either.
Yeah.
But I think I would like to, in a perfect world.
Very occasionally,
when I see the opportunity, give the barbarian his turn. Let him get there.
Right.
Not just say the combat's over, you killed him with a cantrip, and the barbarian cuts his head off. But really let the barbarian feel like he earned it. Because if they've been doing the damage, let the damage dealer finish their thing. The cleric gets the satisfaction of reviving someone, of healing someone. Let the barbarian get the satisfaction of chopping the guy in half. He should have a chance at it. But if he fudges his die roll, his turn is over, and I'm like looking at it like I can't just have this boss live another whole round you guys wailing on him. Then I'm just gonna have to give it to the coolest next kill.
Yeah, it's a tweak for sure at most. And even still, like I don't even know if that's something that does that make me a terrible dude? I'm like I don't know. I've done it a few times, but
I think end of the day, fun is what matters. The reason I don't fudge die rolls is because, knowing myself, I would probably be upset if I felt like a really big moment in the campaign ended up being nothing more than the GM thinking I earned it. Dice at the table really are the last line. Like when we sit down and play this game, when we all agree to one thing, the GM can change everything they want, but in my opinion, the dice are the common ground. That is where the GM and the player meet. The GM has infinite resources. The player has a limited amount that they have to get from the GM.
That's honestly, the dice are what keeps it from being kids hitting each other with blood swords in the backyard.
Yeah. I remember being the judge of, I think Master Chief would break your armor or whatever.
Right.
And I don't want it to just be think anymore because that doesn't feel as good as, the cosmic force of randomness has decided in combination with my things. That I've won. Okay. That's why I like to give advantage before you fudge, And there are times when the closest I think I've gotten to fudging is when I've told a player roll again. I've done that. Mm-hmm. If I feel like a player has not earned their death or whatever's about to happen, but I feel like the player's done everything right by their character, that is when I, as a GM, might go, you've earned a point of inspiration, I'm using it for you. Roll again. Like, I'll give you 1. And then if you lose that, I can't do more for you. The dice have decided, it might not be today, but if I let you live today, you'll die tomorrow. Like, the dice have decided the Reaper is here. Right. Pay your due.
All right. Any last bits of, general stuff? Like, if somebody... So some of the things that you've watched me as a DM over the past couple of years, from comparatively new to... still comparatively new, but less so. And some of the things you told me to work on and with running combats and making things, particularly when the party splits, ideas for that. But in general advice for newer DMs and or DMs who are I want to get better at what I do. What are the things for you that are some of the important, actual things to practice and to work on and to focus on in games?
At the risk of sounding too broad, I think it depends on who you are, but the most important thing is some advice I've gotten many times. Focus on what makes you your GM. What is Maximilian's GMing? Right. What is Nack's GMing? And it's you're thinking about, when you guys are, I'm pitching a game to you. You guys at this point, especially Wednesday's table, are usually maybe in the back of your head going, all right, so Tapper. Tapper's about to run a game for us.
We're not even in the back of our head. We say that out loud.
And it's so what am I getting into? And you know that I'm going to have multiple outs in a combat.
There's going to be
new things that don't follow the PHB and the DMG. And it's this is going to be outside of the box sometimes. Or when I'm pitching the level 0 campaign, and you guys are like, what does that mean exactly? Yeah. And then you guys get there and you have your con mod and hit points. It's like, oh, okay.
Oh, no.
So 1.5 hits is enough to kill me 4 times. And it's like, okay. But focus on what makes you as a GM better. If you are the math GM, if you are the guy that is very good at math, that wants to have spreadsheets and stuff, which I am sometimes, and you want to come up with all these cool little mechanics and bonuses and things, do it. You know, you'll attract the people that want to play your game as time goes on, 1. But 2, the only other thing to do is focus on your weakest parts. You know, ask for feedback. That is important, but, like, what do you feel like you're failing in, and how can you get better at it? You know, for me, I guess it's hard to imagine because I've done that so many times that now it's like I'm still looking for my next failing so I can work on it. So I can't reference one as easily. But I feel like as a GM, one of the biggest things I need to be good at always and never let falter is tone. Tone is super important. If I have you guys walk into a boss fight and I have not built up this boss enough,
we need to know and feel like it's a boss.
Yeah, and even if I need to, like, oh no, like they're in the room, I have not built this guy up enough. I'm just gonna straight up say he looks dangerous.
Right.
You know, I'm gonna start giving you the odds of your success. I want you to know what you're going into, because it does not feel good to go into a boss fight that the GM didn't want you to go into because they didn't express it enough. Or like, I died because I didn't expect this guy to hit like a truck. You know, I will say he looks like he hits like a truck. Like it, you know, or I'll try to have some thematic way to show that, because theme and tone are so important at setting expectations on the go.
Right.
And that is probably one of the hardest things as a GM. The only other advice I have is, and I don't remember if we talked about this before recording or during, run pre-generated stuff. Does not matter if you've hosted for 20 years or if you've hosted for 10 minutes. Run something pre-gen, whether it's the first thing you do or it's the next thing you do. Because I went years, as we've talked, I've been playing kind of since I was 9, and I'm going on 23 now. But when one of my favorite sessions, and which we might talk about in a minute, but a pre-gen thing.
I want to end with that. Like, what is some of your favorite story as a GM? Some of your fondest memories, best things that happened at your table, like the best campaign you've run, stuff like that. So you can tie it all in together.
Yeah.
Bring things to a close.
There was a pre-generated campaign that I ran for a group of friends online, and I was very disappointed with how ultimately it turned out. But the night was just so much fun for me, and I think it's because I was dreading having to run. I didn't want to. But I was trying to give an experience to some people that hadn't gotten a chance to play. I was also trying to meet the demands of having a GM around because some other people who had played wanted to play. And I tired of not playing, but I did not want to be the person that ran. So I ended up digging around really fast, and I found something I kind of liked, and I started the players off in a little, town, told them that they needed to go out into the wilderness to find out what was harrying the villagers. And it was super simple stuff because all I had in front of me was this pre-built ruins full of a couple of traps and a couple of zombies, and it was very simple. I think I had them fight a snake in some water. I had them fight a couple of like wolves that I had reskinned into these kind of fantastic looking things. I don't even remember the descriptions now because I came up with it on the fly. And I had gotten them to this temple, and from that point, where I had only done some basic stuff that was all seat of my pants, everything was in the book. This little pamphlet PDF I had, and I'm like looking through, and I'm going, okay, so this room has this trap in it. And I changed the tone of some things, but it was this overgrown little ruin, and in the top of it was this undead necromantic archbishop of sorts. He was like in the classic robes, and I think when I described him I had a lot of inspiration from Dark Souls with like the bishops and stuff, if you guys know about that. But I described him as this zombified, nasty looking bishop, and they'd finally made it that far, and there was a couple hiccups. There was a point where they found this chest full of money, and they decided we can't carry this everywhere, because one of the things I do in my game is emphasize weight and difficulty. And I'm not just going to have you write that on your character sheet. Where do you put it? Yeah. And they're like, this chest is full of like silvers and coppers and a couple of gold pieces, so it's worth a lot, but we can't just lug it. So the rogue found it first, broke into it, and was trying to be sneaky, but not in a sneaky enough manner, I guess. He like let the players in on entirely, but not the characters. So we had him sneak outside and try to bury it and hide it from the players. So he was the only one that knew where it was, so you could get all of it. And I was like, as the GM, I had no way to weigh in because I didn't do what every good GM should do. Another piece of advice: have an NPC in the party. But I couldn't. I had no hands at the fight, so they were like, give us the money, rogue. And I was like, I stopped the game long enough to tell everyone. I'm like, so just so you understand, especially because we're doing a one shot. Kill him. Threaten him with death. Beat him within an inch of his life. But don't necessarily do it now. Right. Some of you guys are new. You want your money. You will get it. You should get it. But wait maybe until he's not useful to pry the info out of him and then do it.
Wow.
And I ended up telling them, I think, worst case scenario, guys, I know that as players, it's buried out there. As characters, he couldn't have been gone long. I will just give you a couple of rolls, so if he dies and he doesn't share the info, you'll find it. I promise you. Please move forward. Wow. But outside of those couple of hiccups, it was a awesome night. I had like some things here and there, but it was very much out of the book, and then I just added on top. And I think that was one of the first moments I realized as a GM that that's what I want to do. I don't want to build a system from the ground up. Mm-hmm. I don't want to even build an entire campaign from the ground up and a world from the ground up. I probably have most fun personally just running off of someone else's stuff that I can put my new fun ideas on top of.
Right.
Because it's way less stressful. When they walk into a new room, I don't have to go, what's in the room? I just look down, I say what's in the room, and then I add my stuff. I add whatever I want. I go, that was missing that, or that doesn't sound cool enough. I'll change it. Right. And then if I have a moment where I don't know what to change it to, I just don't. Just leave it. And, if they like it, if they don't, it wasn't something I wrote. I'm not going to be upset. And worst case scenario, I'll have a better idea later, and I'll be like, I could have done that.
I feel like if there's a session that goes by where afterwards you're not like, oh, that would have been cool if I did.
Then you're probably not moving forward enough as a GM.
Yeah, you're probably missing something.
Yeah, because that's probably the staple of a GM is always, as like any artist, and then we're artists, I think, criticizing your own work and then thinking, how could it have been better? How will I do it next time? So you're always growing.
All right. Well, cool beans. Thank you so much.
Yeah, it was a pleasure. Thank you very much. I love these conversations. This is what I live for. This is part of the D&D game for me now.
The guy says this is what I live for, but it's true. You've got tattoos of dice on your arms. And you're not joking.
No, it's this is me. This is what I love. So,
alrighty. Thank you.
And that's a wrap for this episode of the GM Next Door. If you have comments, questions for my next guest, or feedback, hit me up. You can find me at dungeonmasterdaily.com and on Instagram at dungeonmasterdaily. You can also call in with your own questions at anchor.fm/GM Next Door. Thanks for listening, and I'll see you next time. Now get out there and tell a story.